My son looked me straight in the eyes, smirked, and said, "Dad, you're basically broke. You can barely manage your own expenses. Stop pretending you understand money." Those words cut deeper than any knife. Not because they were true, but because they came from the child I raised with sleepless nights, double shifts, and every sacrifice a parent could make. He didn't stop there. In front of his wife, my daughter-in-law, he laughed and added, "You're lucky I even let you stay in this house. Just sit quietly and don't embarrass yourself." I felt my chest tighten. My own son, mocking me for the retirement fund I had built with decades of sweat. He had no idea that behind my silence, behind my simple clothes, behind my old, scratched-up phone, lay a truth I had never revealed to him or to anyone else. A truth worth far more than what he thought he owned. But I didn't say a word that day. I simply got up, walked out of his living room, and closed the door behind me. Quietly. Later that week, he called again, not to apologize, not to check on me, but to yell at me. "Dad, the bank is after me again. If you can't help, just say it. I can't believe I'm stuck with such a useless parent." Useless to him, I was useless. He didn't know I was the one who had paid the down payment for his house. He didn't know I secretly paid off his late EMI to keep his credit safe. He didn't know that every month I quietly deposited money into an account under his name, an account he never bothered to check. And he definitely didn't know what I had just finished doing that morning. I had paid off his entire mortgage, every single dollar. The house he bragged about owning, I now legally owned it in my name. But I wasn't done, not even close, because the day he mocked me for being broke was the day I decided to teach him a lesson he would remember for the rest of his life, and what happened next changed our family forever. I still remember the exact tone of his voice, sharp, irritated, dripping with disrespect, as if every word he spoke was meant to stab me a little deeper. We were sitting in his living room. His wife had her arms crossed, pretending to scroll through her phone, but her smirk gave her away. My son, standing tall like he had conquered the world, said loudly, "Dad, you don't understand anything about finances. You barely have a retirement fund. You're practically broke." Everyone in the room froze. His wife's sister chuckled under her breath. His father-in-law adjusted his glasses, pretending he didn't hear it. My daughter-in-law looked at me with the same pity someone gives to a beggar on the street. And my son, my own blood, stood there, chin raised, waiting for me to defend myself. But I didn't. I couldn't. My throat felt tight. My eyes burned, but I forced myself to stay calm. He wasn't done humiliating me. "Seriously, Dad, I don't know why you keep giving me financial advice. You never did anything big in life. Look at this house. Look at my life. I created this, not you." His wife nodded proudly. I looked around. The house was beautiful polished tiles, new furniture, luxury decor. I had contributed to almost all of it, but he had forgotten, or maybe he never cared to remember. Then he said the line that destroyed whatever remaining respect was holding us together. "Honestly, Dad, you should be grateful I even let you stay here last month. People like you shouldn't talk about money. People like you." That was the moment something inside me broke. Not my pride, no. My pride had been stepped on years ago. It was my hope that broke. Hope that he would one day see my sacrifices. Hope that he would one day talk to me with warmth. Hope that my only son remembered the nights I skipped meals so he could eat, the mornings I walked to work so he could have bus money, the years I worked 2 jobs to send him to college. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to remind him, but my voice just didn't come out. His wife leaned forward and said sharply, "Your father doesn't even understand modern money. He doesn't belong in our financial discussions." I didn't belong. In my son's home, in my son's life, in my son's respect, I quietly stood up. I didn't say a word. I simply walked out, but the story didn't end there. It was only the first strike, because the same people who called me broke were about to face a truth so big. Their entire world would turn upside down. When I stepped out of his house that day, the cold air hit my face, but it wasn't the wind, it was reality. As I walked home, memories came flooding back. He wasn't always like this. There was a time he held my hand while crossing the street, a time he'd run toward me when I came home from work, a time he called me my hero. But life changed when he grew up, especially after he got married. Before that, everything we had. We built together. After his mother passed away, it was just him and me. I worked day and night, a factory job in the morning and hotel cleaning at night. My hands were always rough, my back always in pain, but somehow seeing him study at night made it worth it. I used to peek into his room and whisper, "I'll give you a life better than mine." And I did. I paid for his school, paid for his university admission, paid for his first car, which he tells everyone he bought himself, paid for his wedding, even paid for the down payment of the very house he just mocked me in. But the moment he married her, everything shifted. Suddenly I became old-fashioned, too emotional, not modern enough, a burden. His wife didn't like that I was close to him. She didn't like that he asked me for advice. Slowly, she created distance between us. First, it was fewer visits, then no more weekend dinners, then whispered conversations between them each time I entered the room, and finally, the disrespect became normal. But even after all that, I kept helping him. He didn't know, of course. He never knew I secretly paid 3 of his late mortgage installments so the bank wouldn't take action. He never knew I fixed his credit score quietly. He never knew that every bonus I received went straight into a savings account under his name, a savings account he had forgotten existed. I did all of that because I believed one day he would understand. One day he would mature. One day he would remember my sacrifices, but instead, he called me broke. He had no idea what I was truly worth, because while he spent money to show off, I spent my life saving quietly. And those savings were about to save something far bigger than he ever imagined. 3 days after that humiliating conversation, my phone rang. Not a gentle ring, not a checking in ring. No, it rang with desperation. Dad, pick up. It was my son. My heart tightened. Something was wrong. I answered quietly, "Yes, Beta." His voice exploded through the speaker. The bank called. They're saying I missed 3 mortgage payments again. They're threatening legal action. Why didn't you tell me you can't help me anymore? I froze. He hadn't made any payments in months. He was drowning in debt. But instead of taking responsibility, he blamed me. "Dad, are you listening?" He shouted. I'm listening." I said calmly, "You're so irresponsible. I asked you to help with 1 or 2 payments. Isn't that the least you can do? You're my father. What kind of father can't even support his own son?" His wife grabbed the phone. I could hear her voice in the background. Tell him we'll lose the house because of him, because he's broke. Broke. There was that word again, the word they loved using. I wanted to say it. I wanted to scream it. I wanted to tell him I already paid those mortgage payments. I saved you again. But I held my tongue. He wasn't calling for help. He was calling for someone to blame, and the more he yelled, the more painful the truth became. He didn't care about my struggles. He didn't care about my sacrifices. He didn't care about respect. He only cared about what he could get from me, but what he didn't know was, that very morning, while he was calling me useless, I had just sat with my lawyer. And together, we took a step that would change everything. A step that involved his mortgage, his house, his future. He thought I was broke. He thought I had nothing. But he was about to learn. I wasn't just helping him. I was about to take control of everything he owned. After my son's angry call ended, I sat alone on my old wooden chair, the same chair I'd used for 15 years. The cushion had flattened, the arms were scratched, but it still held me like an old friend. Quietly, I opened the small metal locker in my room. The same locker no one in the house cared about. The same locker everyone thought held old clothes and dusty papers. Inside were neatly organized envelopes, an old passbook, investment certificates, and a file with property documents. Things no one knew existed. You see, I had never lived a flashy life. I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't waste money. I repaired old shoes instead of buying new ones. I reused furniture instead of upgrading. I saved every bonus, every overtime payment, every tax refund. People called me stingy. I called it discipline, and that discipline had brought me a lot further than most people ever knew. I had invested in small savings schemes 25 years ago. Bought a tiny piece of land in my hometown 18 years ago. Put money into monthly deposits that I never told anyone about. Interest grew quietly. Savings grew quietly. And over the decades, that small retirement fund, my son mocked. had become something he couldn't even imagine, but I stayed silent. Why? Because I wanted him to live his life, not chase my money. Because I wanted him to understand the value of hard work, not depend on mine. Because I prayed he would one day come to me, not for money, but for love and respect. But he never did. The more successful he became, the more he pushed me away. He chased status. He chased luxury. He chased approval from his in-laws, and he forgot the man who raised him from nothing. I looked through the sheets in the locker. One file in particular stood out. The savings account I created the year he turned 18. Every month, without fail, I deposited money into it. He had no idea that account existed anymore. The balance was enough to clear his mortgage twice. My hands trembled, not because of the money, but because of the realization I had spoiled him. My love had turned into fuel for his arrogance. I closed the locker gently. My son thinks I have nothing. I whispered to myself, he thinks I'm broke. But he had no idea the storm that was coming, a storm that would expose everything. The next morning, I took a bus to meet my lawyer, Mr. Hamid, a sharp, calm man in his late 50s who had been handling my documents for years. He respected me more than my own son did. When I entered his office, he smiled warmly. "Ah, Mr. Rahim, you're right on time, as always. I need your advice," I said quietly, "about my son's mortgage." He raised an eyebrow. "The same house you helped him purchase." I nodded. He sighed softly. I had a feeling something like this was coming. Did something happen? I didn't want to repeat my son's cruel words, but they echoed in my mind anyway. He called me broke, I whispered. He insulted me in front of his entire in-law family. Mr. Hamid's face hardened. And the mortgage? He hasn't paid it in months. The bank will take action soon. He opened a file on his desk and flipped through the documents I had brought earlier. "Look," he said, adjusting his glasses, "there is a way to fix this. You can pay off the remaining mortgage amount. Once you do, we can legally shift the property ownership into your name." I froze into. "My name, but the house belongs to my son," I said softly, almost defensively. Mr. Hamid leaned forward. "No," he said firmly, "the house belongs to whoever pays for it." I didn't speak. He continued, "Your son is drowning in debt. He has missed too many payments. If you step in and clear it, the ownership rightfully transfers to you." The room felt heavy. This wasn't a small decision. This wasn't about money. This was about respect. "And justice, are you sure?" I asked. One last confirmation, one last hesitation. "Absolutely," he said, "and legally, he cannot challenge it if the bank hands you the final clearance letter." Silence. Then I nodded slowly. "Do it." He smiled gently. "I'll start the paperwork." "Wait." I said, "There's more." I handed him another file. When he opened it, his eyes widened. "Mr. Rahim, this much savings, you never told me." I looked down. "I never told anyone." He closed the file carefully. "You saved enough to rescue your son, but instead he chose to insult you." I nodded, "And now," he said softly, "you hold the power." Power, a word I had never associated with myself. But today, it felt real. It felt deserved. The lawyer stood and shook my hand. "We'll finalize everything in the next few days." As I left his office, one thought stayed in my mind. My son had no idea what decision I had just taken. The next 3 days felt like a strange dream. My son kept calling, yelling, blaming, insulting. His wife sent long voice notes accusing me of ruining their future. Her parents even sent a message telling me to stop being a burden, but I stayed silent. I stopped answering. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I made the biggest financial move of my life. With Mr. Hamid by my side, I walked into the bank. The officer recognized me immediately. He had seen me several times making payments on my son's behalf. "Mr. Rahim," he said respectfully. "Back again." One last time I nodded. He showed me the pending amount. It was large, very large. So large that it would crush most parents mentally. But I didn't flinch. I took out my check, a check I had prepared the night before, and handed it to him. His eyes widened. You're paying everything off all at once." "Yes," I said, "everything." He processed the payment. Stamp after stamp, signature after signature, each one echoing through my heart like a drum. When the final stamp hit the paper, the officer smiled. Congratulations, the house is officially debt-free. I closed my eyes for a moment. It wasn't relief, it wasn't joy, it was justice. Mr. Hamid collected the documents and placed them in a folder. This, he said, tapping the folder gently, is the most important part. With this clearance, the house deed will now transition to your name. I didn't speak. Not because I was unsure, but because I understood the weight of what was happening. My son thought I had nothing, but today, I held his entire house in my hands. When I stepped outside the bank, my phone buzzed. Another message from my son. If you won't help me, I'll lose everything. What kind of father are you? Call me back. I looked at the screen, and for the first time, his anger didn't hurt me, because he didn't know the truth. Not yet, but he would, very soon, and when he did, his entire world, his pride, his arrogance, his ego would collapse, because I wasn't just his father anymore. I was about to become the owner of everything he bragged about. The next few days felt like I was living in a storm. Not a storm of lightning and thunder, but a storm of disrespect, entitlement, and greed. Danish kept calling me nonstop, 5 calls a day, sometimes 10. And every call started with the same sentence. Dad, stop dragging this. Just sign the papers. There was no how are you? No, are you feeling okay? Not even the politeness a stranger would show you. Just pressure, just demands, just entitlement. Once, when I didn't pick up his calls for a few hours, he showed up at my house unannounced, barging in like he owned the place. Why aren't you answering your phone? He snapped. I looked at him calmly, because I don't need to report my every move to you. He scoffed. Dad, don't act like a child. We're trying to buy a house. This is for the family. Family? He used that word so casually, the same word he forgot when he mocked my savings and called me broke. Sarah stood behind him with her arms folded, eyes rolling dramatically. Honestly, Uncle, you're making this so complicated. She said, just sign, Danish is your son. I turned to her slowly, and that gives him the right to risk my entire home. She smirked, the kind of smirk that cuts deeper than an insult. You're overthinking. You don't even use your house properly. What are you saving it for? My blood turned cold. She said it as if I was already dead. As if my house, my life, my security, was just an asset waiting for them. Then Danish leaned closer, lowering his voice. Dad, stop being dramatic. You don't have the money to help us directly. At least do something useful for once. Useful. Useful, my own child. The same child I fed, clothed, and protected for decades, called me useless. I sat down slowly, not because I was weak, but because if I didn't sit, I might have said something I would regret. Then I asked him directly, is this house loan for you both, or for your in-laws too? His eyes flashed in panic for a split second. That was enough. There was more to the story, a lot more, and he knew I had caught on. He slammed the papers on the table. Dad, sign it by tomorrow. I'm done explaining. If you really care about me, you'll do it. Care. He wanted me to risk my home, to prove I cared. I stayed silent. He stormed out, Sarah pulling him by the arm, muttering something about old people and their egos. But the silence after they left, that silence wasn't fear, it was fire, because the next morning, something arrived that changed everything, and when I opened it, I smiled for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I was sitting on the veranda when I heard the sound of a motorbike stopping outside. The courier boy walked in and said, Sir, package for you. It requires your signature. I signed, not knowing what it was. When I opened the envelope and saw the seal, my heart skipped a beat. It was from Mr. Farouk, my lawyer. Inside were 2 documents. 1. Original sale deed of my house. 2. A certified letter confirming full ownership of the investment property I had secretly purchased years ago. Yes. A property. A second one, something my son didn't know about, because years ago, long before Danish got married, long before the disrespect, I had bought a small house as an investment, quietly, privately, just in case my old age needed security. And now, that property had appreciated in value by millions. I had forgotten about it, honestly, but Mr. Farouk hadn't. The letter read, Sir, as per your instructions years ago, the second property is fully registered in your name. Value estimate attached. I turned the page, and my eyes widened. The house I had bought for PKR 11 million was now worth more than PKR 70 million. I laughed. A deep, unexpected laugh that came straight from relief. I wasn't broke. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't outdated, like Sarah said. I was a man who had saved quietly, invested smartly, and lived simply. I lifted the documents close to my chest. Allah, thank you. I whispered, and then there was more. A final note from Mr. Farouk. Call me when you receive this. We need to discuss the matter regarding your son. I called immediately. He answered on the first ring. Ah, good. You got it. Yes, I said. Now tell me, what should I do? He spoke slowly, choosing every word. Let him keep thinking you're broke. It's time to show him what respect really costs. I stayed quiet, listening. Come to my office tomorrow, bring the mortgage papers, and prepare yourself. Because we're going to end this disrespect once and for all. A calm settled over me, not revenge, not anger, just clarity. For the first time in months, I felt like the parent again, not a man being cornered, not a man being used, a man with control. The next day, after finalizing the strategy with Mr. Farouk, I made one last decision. I would not tell Danish anything. Not a word. I would let him believe I was broke. Let him talk, let him mock, because the truth, the real truth, would land on him like a thunderbolt, and the moment to reveal it arrived much sooner than expected. Because 2 days later, I received a call from the bank, a call that forced everything into motion. 2 days later, around 6 in the evening, my phone rang. The screen flashed. Mortgage Department, the City Bank. I picked up. Mr. Danish has listed you as financial guarantor. The officer said politely, we need your confirmation before final approval. My blood boiled. He had submitted the documents, without my consent. I thanked the officer and asked him to hold processing until I visited in person. After the call, I contacted Mr. Farouk. It's time, I said. He responded with only 2 words, I'm ready. We agreed to meet the next morning at Danish's house. And that night, I barely slept, not because I was scared, but because my heart was heavy with disappointment, not anger. When morning arrived, I got ready, put all my documents in a folder, and stepped outside. Mr. Farouk was already waiting in his car. We drove in silence, not awkward silence. A powerful silence, the kind that comes before a storm. When we reached Danish's house, I saw his new expensive car parked outside. The same car he bought while telling me, Dad, things are tight for us. We need help. I breathed slowly, ready. Mr. Farouk asked, yes. I said, we walked to the door. Sarah opened it. Her smile vanished the moment she saw the lawyer behind me. Oh, Uncle, why are you here with him? Call Danish. I said calmly. She hesitated, then turned around and shouted, Danish, your father is here. With a lawyer. He came out of the living room looking irritated. Dad, why are you being dramatic now? We already submitted the forms to the bank. I held up the mortgage file. This is exactly why I'm here. He rolled his eyes. Dad, stop overreacting. Mr. Farouk stepped forward. Mr. Danish, you submitted legal documents under your father's name without his written consent. That is a criminal offense. Danish's face turned pale. What? No, it's not like that. Save it. I interrupted. We're not here to argue. Sarah folded her arms. Why are you both making this a big deal? It's family. Family. They loved that word when they needed something. I looked at both of them, my son and his wife. Standing in the home I helped them get. The home I visited less and less because respect was not welcome there. Then I said quietly, I think it's time you both learn something. Danish frowned. What? I took a deep breath and stepped inside, because what I was about to reveal would flip the entire situation upside down, and in a few minutes, he would realize the biggest mistake of his life. We all sat in the living room, me, Danish, Sarah, and Mr. Farouk. The air felt thick, like the moment before a thunderstorm hits. Danish tried to act confident. Dad, you're making this bigger than it is. Just sign the papers. It's one signature. It'll help us. I placed the mortgage file on the table, slowly. Danish, did you tell the bank I agreed to be your guarantor? He swallowed hard. A fraction of guilt flickered on his face. Dad, the deadline was close, so you lied. I asked calmly. He didn't answer. Mr. Farouk spoke instead. We have already informed the bank that Mr. Danish submitted documents without consent. They will freeze the application until a formal investigation. Sarah shot up from the sofa. What? Why would you do that? You're ruining everything. I still hadn't raised my voice, not once, because when the truth is on your side, you don't need to shout. I opened my folder. Inside were two things. One, proof I had already paid off their existing mortgage too. The official ownership transfer document I placed both on the table. Danish blinked in confusion. What is this? This? I said, tapping the first document, is the receipt showing I paid off the remainder of your mortgage last month. They both stared at me. I continued, voice steady. You didn't even give me a chance to help. You judged me, mocked me, called me broke. Sarah stepped back, shocked. Danish whispered, You paid it off? Yes, I replied, in cash. They looked at each other, stunned. I opened the second document. And this is the ownership paper. Since the house was purchased using my money, and the mortgage was closed using my money. The property is legally mine now. Sarah gasped. Danish's face tightened with panic. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying, I replied, that I now own this house. Silence, a long, heavy silence. Sarah's voice trembled with anger. You tricked us? I turned my eyes to her. No, you tricked yourselves. You assumed I was helpless. You assumed I had nothing left. You assumed I couldn't make decisions. Danish sank onto the sofa, face pale. I didn't take your house. I said softly. I simply took back the house I paid for. He covered his face with his hands. Sarah whispered under her breath, This can't be happening. But it was just the beginning, because what I said next made both of them freeze. We're not done yet. I took a long breath and placed another file on the table. Danish looked up, confused. What's that? This, I said, is the evaluation report of the second property I own. He blinked. Second property? What second property? I leaned back, the one I bought quietly, the one I invested in years ago, the one that appreciated far more than anyone expected. Sarah's mouth fell open. You have another house, not a house, I corrected. A villa? Danish stared at me, shaking his head slowly. What villa? I showed him a printed picture, a beautiful, modern villa in an upscale area. Sarah snatched the paper from my hand. This is worth, yes, I said. Over $7 million in current value. Their combined shock filled the room like a clap of thunder. Danish's voice cracked. Dad, you bought this when, years ago, I replied, when you were busy buying cars and showing off, I was saving, investing, preparing. Sarah stepped closer. But you acted like you had nothing. I looked at her calmly. You treated me like I had nothing. The color drained from her face. Danish whispered, All these years, you never told us. I leaned forward. Why would I? You never asked how I was. Only what I could give. Danish's voice rose, desperate now. Dad, you could have told me. I'm your son. I didn't tell you. I said softly, because your reactions today tell me exactly what you would have done back then. He stared at me. And here's the important part. I continued. I didn't just buy the villa. I paused. Sarah leaned forward, trembling. Then what? I looked directly at Danish. I paid for it in cash. Their eyes widened. Their expressions collapsed. Their pride shattered instantly. For years, they mocked me for living simply, for not showing off, for not flashing money like they did. And now they realized I lived quietly. Because quiet people build silently. Sarah tried to smile nervously. So this means we can all move into the villa. I raised a hand. No, that villa is not for you. Her smile died instantly. Danish whispered, Then who is it for? My answer changed their world forever. It's for your sister. The room went dead silent. Not a sound, not a breath, not a movement. It was Sarah who reacted first. What? She screamed. You're giving a $7 million villa to her, to Amina. I didn't flinch. Yes. Danish's voice cracked. Dad. Why would you do that? I looked at him, at the son I raised, the son I loved, the son who slowly turned into a stranger. Because she respected me, I said, because she never asked for anything, because she never treated me like a wallet. He swallowed, eyes glistening. But I'm your son. You stopped acting like one. That sentence broke him. Sarah stepped forward angrily. You can't do this. You can't just give everything to her. I smiled. Everything? Oh no, I'm not giving everything to her. They both exhaled in relief. Then I added, I'm just not giving it to you. Their relief shattered instantly. Sarah screamed again. This is unfair. It's illegal. You can't take this house. Mr. Farouk stood up. Legally, this house belongs to him. You have no claim to it. Danish looked like someone had punched him. He whispered, Dad, don't do this, please. I stood up slowly. Do you remember the day you called me broke? He closed his eyes. And do you remember the day you said I wasn't useful? He didn't respond. And do you remember telling me old people go broke, that I should stay quiet and sign whatever you bring? His shoulders slumped. That was the day. I said, you lost the right to my blessings and my property. Danish looked up, desperate. But we're family. Family. I repeated. You only remember that word when you want something. Sarah grabbed Danish's arm. We're leaving. We're not listening to this humiliation. I stepped aside. This is my house now. You may leave whenever you're ready. They froze. What do you mean? Danish whispered. I pointed to the door. You have 1 week to move out. Sarah's face turned red. What? Where will we go? That, I said softly, is something you should have thought about before calling me broke. Danish collapsed onto the sofa, hands covering his face. Sarah glared at me with pure hatred. You'll regret this. I smiled. No, you regret thinking love comes second and greed comes first. They stared at me broken, defeated, silent, and I walked toward the door with Mr. Farouk. Before stepping out, I said one final line. Respect matters more than money, and now you finally understand why. I closed the door behind me, and their world stayed on the other side. When my son and daughter-in-law were finally forced to leave the house, I expected anger, shouting, maybe even threats. But what I didn't expect was what happened 3 days later. There was a knock on my apartment door late at night, soft, hesitant, nothing like the furious banging I was used to. When I opened it, my son stood there, completely drained. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped, his shirt wrinkled like he'd been wearing it for days. Dad, he whispered, his voice cracking. For a moment, I said nothing. I just studied his face, searching for the arrogance, the entitlement, the coldness he'd shown me for months. But none of it was there. All I saw was a scared young man, the same boy who used to hold my hand on the way to school. He walked inside and sat on the edge of my sofa, staring at the floor. I messed up, he said finally. I kept my distance, sitting across from him. Tell me what's going on. He covered his face with both hands. Dad, I'm drowning. The business isn't doing well. I took loans, a lot of them. The house wasn't just a house. I needed it to impress investors, keep up appearances, show people I was successful. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, not because of his confession, but because he had chosen pride over honesty. You could have told me, I said quietly. He laughed bitterly. Told you what? That your son, the one who mocked your retirement fund, can't pay his own bills, can't take care of his family, can't be the man he pretended to be. I watched him unravel, piece by piece. My friends, my wife, everyone expects me to be someone I'm not, he admitted, and when I saw you living simple, I thought, he paused, struggling, I thought you were weak, I thought money defined everything, I thought, if you didn't have much, you didn't matter. His words were painful but honest. He wiped his eyes. Dad, I'm scared. Debt collectors are calling. I thought if I pushed you, if I took the house, if I forced you to help me, I could fix everything. I let out a slow breath, each word of his confession sinking into me. So you mocked me, disrespected me, used me, all because you were afraid. I said gently. He nodded, tears falling freely now. I didn't know how to handle my failures. I didn't know how to be a good son. For the first time in months, he looked me straight in the eyes, not with superiority, but with desperation. Dad, can you ever forgive me? I sat beside him slowly, letting my thoughts settle. I could feel the weight of his mistakes, the heaviness of his fear, but I also felt the echoes of every insult he had thrown at me broke. Useless, old man, you don't belong here. I placed my hands on my knees and sighed. Son, let me tell you something I should have told you a long time ago. He looked up, eyes swollen, waiting. You think money builds a family. You think wealth gives a person value. No. I said, respect does. Character does. He swallowed hard, guilt covering his face. All your life, I continued. I worked quietly. I saved quietly. I lived simply because I never believed money made me better or worse than anyone else. Your mother believed the same. He lowered his head at the mention of his mother. You saw my simplicity as weakness. You saw your own lifestyle as strength. I said, But strength isn't in showing off. It's in treating others with dignity, especially your parents. My son wiped his face again, ashamed. You wanted my inheritance without respecting me. You wanted my property without honoring my role in your life. You thought you were entitled to everything simply because you are my son. He didn't argue. He couldn't, I continued softly. Inheritance is not a right. It's not a prize. It's a gift only given when there is trust, gratitude, and respect. He nodded slowly, like a student finally understanding a lesson he had ignored for years. If you had just talked to me, I said, if you had told me about your debt, your fear, your pressure, I would have helped you, gladly, because that's what parents do. He looked up sharply, surprised. But instead, you tried to take what wasn't yours, you mocked me, you lied, you disrespected your own father. His lips trembled. I know, Dad. I was stupid, I was wrong. I leaned back, exhausted but calm. Son, the house, the property, the money, none of it hurts as much as the way you spoke to me. That's what broke my heart. He covered his face again, sobbing. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I let him cry. I didn't stop him, because those tears weren't just sadness, they were understanding. Finally, he whispered, what happens now? I looked at him long and hard, knowing that what I said next would shape our future. I stood up and walked to the window, letting the silence stretch between us. I wanted my words to come from clarity, not anger. After a long moment, I turned to him. Here's what happens now, I said gently. You rebuild, but not with my money, with your honesty, your humility, and your character. He nodded slowly, not defeated, understanding. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I continued. But I am drawing a boundary. You need to learn how to value relationships more than appearances, more than status, more than wealth. He swallowed, listening closely. The house stays with me. I said clearly, not because I need it, but because you need to learn that inheritance is something earned through respect, not forced through manipulation. He closed his eyes, accepting it quietly. I'll help you emotionally, I'll guide you, I'll give advice, but money, no, not now, not until you become a man who values his father, not just his father's assets. Tears streamed down his cheeks again. I understand, Dad. I want to change. I nodded. Then start today. Apologize to your wife. Be honest about your struggles. Pay your debts. Earn back trust not from the world, but from your own family. He broke down again, this time hugging me with a sincerity I hadn't felt in years. I love you, Dad. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll earn it. I placed a hand on his back and whispered, that's all I ever wanted. When he left that night, he wasn't the same man who once mocked my retirement fund or called me a burden. He left as a son trying to rebuild himself from the inside out. In the days that followed, he started fixing his life slowly, painfully, honestly, and I, for the first time in a long time, felt at peace. Because justice wasn't the house, it wasn't the deed. Justice was the lesson learned. And as I sat in my quiet home, the home he once said I didn't deserve, I whispered the words that closed this chapter of my life. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too.